If you're using ChatGPT or a generative AI, think of it as a very enthusiastic intern. Their goal is to provide you with an answer. Always be wary of that answer. So verify. Check out any references it has, and don't assume that because it's an AI, it knows more than you do.
Welcome to the Tippie Leads podcast. Stories from the University of Iowa's Tippie College of Business that will change the way you work and lead. I'm your host, Nick Westergaard. I teach at Tippie and lead our Story Lab program. This podcast provides another opportunity to share stories from Tippie with our community and beyond. Each season of Tippie Leads, we explore a grand challenge in today's changing world of work. This season, we're looking at artificial intelligence. From strategy to operations, AI is everywhere. But while the tools keep advancing, a big question remains. How do we use AI responsibly? How can businesses make sure they're not just efficient with AI, but also ethical and effective? To start, we'll hear from Tippie's Pat Johanns, who studies how businesses can integrate AI responsibly and who's just written a new textbook on that very subject. Then we'll hear from Tippie undergrad Trusha Bhatt, whose story highlights lessons about responsibility at work and boundaries. Finally, we'll wrap up with a final Tip E just for you. Ready? Let's get started. Pat Johanns brings a unique blend of academic expertise and real-world insight to his role as Associate Professor of Instruction at Tippie. He teaches courses ranging from foundational undergraduate classes to the MSBA capstone in business analytics and operations management. And he's now developing an innovative new course on artificial intelligence in business. Pat is also the author of the forthcoming book, AI in Business: Creating Value Responsibly. In short, Pat is one of the leading voices in showing us not just how to use AI, but how to use it responsibly. So, Pat, I have to talk about the fact that as we were preparing for this interview, you sent me a one-pager that you'd distilled everything about your upcoming book to kind of guide us through this conversation. And my quippy reply was, great, now I'll put this into my AI to help me generate interview questions. And as we sit down to talk about responsible use of AI, is what we both just did responsible?
I think so. Of course, I did it, so I guess it's responsible, right?
It is because I say so.
I have a secure AI, and that means that I pay a subscription on it, and that means the data that I put into the AI is not accessible to the AI to use as training data. Because I know that, then I can put in the contents of my book. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about is, using AI responsibly. And it helped me summarize all the ethical issues that go on in the book. So the one pager, basically I told it to go through the materials in the book and look at issues that might be of interest from both an individual and a corporate standpoint. And as you can see, it generated a nice list of a few things on either on both an individual standpoint and on a corporate standpoint, and give you something that looks interesting that you might ask questions about.
So the book that we're talking about, AI in Business, Creating Value Responsibly, you've noted that it's not a traditional textbook. And I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about that and what prompted you to write about something at a time when that something itself is unfolding in front of us.
Yeah, the format of I've been counseled to say product or resource because I won't have a physical book at the end of this. So while I'm working with McGraw-Hill Publishing, with certain products, they're moving away from the hardcover books that we've been used to. When you teach courses, our students are really tending toward ebooks, and it provides a number of big advantages in publishing. One, you can go to print faster, so to speak. You don't have to plan out a big print run. And of course, when you're doing a big print run, you've got to do careful calculations on costs and projections. Ebook, we get it to the stage that we can put up, and it scales very nicely. So it makes the process faster and cheaper. If we think about sustainability, we're not printing on paper and using up trees. So we're a bit more responsible in terms of sustainability. And with this particular topic, things are changing so quickly that stuff that I do now or right now could be old news in just a year or two. And we know in the textbook market, a lot of times you bring out a new edition every couple years. Cynical students would say that's just to put a new version on it so that they can charge us more money and you can't resell the old textbooks. That may be true for some people. I don't know. But the format we're using is called Evergreen, which means as things change, as I see something come up on my feed during the day, I can go and change it in the book, in a sense. And if you're using my book to teach from, at the start of the semester, you can say, I'm taking the version of the book as of today, and all those changes get incorporated in your book. And so the students always have the most up-to-date information that we have. And with this topic, that's absolutely vital.
That is so important and so helpful too for something that is changing as we're recording this. So one thing that maybe is happening in the background of all of this is the technology is developing, changing, coming up with different use cases, is we're thinking more and more about how we use it. And a big focus of the book, as you mentioned, is responsibility. How did you arrive at that particular focus, both at the individual and corporate level?
I'll first go back just a little bit, and you kind of asked, how I got started on the topic, and it'll lead to that answer. 2 years ago, I was asked to incorporate some content on artificial intelligence in our Foundations of Business Analytics course. And quite frankly, there wasn't any material out there by any of the major publishers. I just needed a chapter or two, and you can, do a custom book and grab a chapter or two if it's out there, but there wasn't any material. So that's how I started writing about the material. At the same time, I was invited to join our AI task force within the College of Business. AI popped up prominently on the screens of academics, just a couple years ago. And what got everybody excited in the wrong way was reports that students were using it to cheat. You could, I think the app was called QuizBot, and add it to your browser. And if you're taking an online exam, which we got used to doing a lot of during COVID,
Right.
it could sense a multiple choice question on the screen, and it would use ChatGPT to go search for the answer on the web. And so we saw cheating occur, and people that were assigning papers. ChatGPT was coming into play, and people were using it to try and write papers. And so there's a real concern that our students aren't getting a full academic experience because they're taking the easy way out and using AI. So I think the first effort was really just to kind of say, let's ban this. And tools came out to detect the use of AI and everything like that. And it became kind of an arms race, which, in retrospect, becomes kind of pointless because if you talk to industry, and we've got our industry boards, they want employees that are skilled in using AI and have some experience with it, using it well. And because one of the purposes of the business school is to turn out people that can do business well. We have to incorporate AI somewhere in our curriculum. And if we're going to include it, we need to teach them how to use it responsibly. Because you can see the first uses people had of it were irresponsible uses, and it wasn't aiding their learning. But if we could teach them how to use it in a constructive manner, then it would be a real asset to our students and to the people that employ our students.
As we think about that and thinking about it at the individual level, what does responsible use look like for individuals? And then on the corporate level, the organizational side,
Sure.
what does that look like?
On the individual level, one of the things that you need to keep in mind is unless you've got a secure AI, anything you put in as a prompt could be used as learning data for somebody else. So just I mentioned before, in using our book, we had to be careful about that. If you are in an industry which has sensitive data, whether it is trade secrets or patients or students that you've got personal data on, you do not want that any place that it could get out in the wild. And so, one of the first areas of responsibility is making sure that you're keeping data secure that should be kept secure. And that's a starting point. The other thing is many people are using generative AI. And I put that word generative in front for a reason. We've been using AI since more or less since the 50s and 60s. Linear regression is artificial intelligence. And most of us took a stat course, and so we've actually used AI, but it's generative AI, I think, is what got everybody excited. Well, the problem with generative AI is it's creative. And the purpose of ChatGPT, of Claude, of Grok, of any of these open AI type programs is to create an answer for you. And it looks at past documents or images if we're trying to generate images. And in a predictive manner, it basically builds a response one word at a time. And it's a response. It doesn't care whether it is a factual response. So it generates an answer for you, and it could be totally fictitious. And if you are blindly using AI, you may be generating errors and putting your name on it or your company's name on it, and that won't get AI or your career any further.
You mentioned workforce responsibility as well, reskilling rather than replacing. And this is a point of tension among both from the employee perspective and the organizational one. So how should leaders think about the human side of AI adoption?
Well, one of the big examples of AI adoption that we currently see is the last time you called for help, whether it was on a credit card or a consumer problem, did you talk to a person or did you talk to a computer to start with? Many of those call centers are being run by chatbots now. And what happened to all those call centers? And that's what the company needs to take into account. If we think about sustainability, the workforce is actually one of the UN's lists of sustainable things that you've got to take care of the communities you're in and the workforce. And so instead of just strictly replacing people, you can try and reskill them for the AI world. So give people additional training so that their role in the company, and it's really shifting the role rather than replacing the role, instead of going to be the first person that answers and tries to answer some of the questions are really basic, and AI is really great at it. But when things get complicated, we would like to have a human take over. I know on a number of calls I say representative a few times, and then I get Yes,
Agent.
absolutely. Because you know what you have is just a little too complicated for an AI. And by training our people that used to handle all the mundane stuff to be able just to handle the stuff that gets bumped up to them, we increase their power, their abilities. We actually have AI augmented jobs, and that's kind of where part of the shift is within companies rather than just laying off people. Say, can we shift them to where they'll be using AI more in their job to answer questions and to do analysis?
Yeah, I think I've heard, I think it's a Scott Galloway quote that says, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI better. And as we've been talking about more responsibly as well, as we look ahead and we talk about technology that's developing, using it responsibly, is there a tension between innovation and responsibility? And how can we prepare for what's ahead?
You reminded me of a news article I heard just this week. Lynn County is doing some rezoning, and the rezoning they're doing is regarding nuclear power. During COVID, basically the Duane Arnold nuclear plant was mothballed, whatever term they decommissioned.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And all over the country, we have data centers being put in. We have server farms being put in, and these things use a lot of energy. And how do you power them? So they're going to bring Duane Arnold back online, or at least that's the plan, in order to power data centers. They're going to refire up one of the power plants on 3 Mile Island to run a data center or a server farm. These uses of artificial intelligence chew up a lot of electricity, and we need to think about how we're going to generate that electricity, whether it is nuclear, and they're even talking about putting in like these small nuclear generators like you'd have in a submarine just to run a single data center. Or the EU has done some interesting things with green energy. They're generating power through geothermal, through solar, through wind power and such to power some of their data centers. So they've got a real effort there to try and use renewable energy. So, we've got to think about where are we going to put these things? How are we going to handle them so that we can still provide people with electricity? And people don't want their own energy prices to go up. While a community bringing in a data center is bringing in industry, it's not going to employ a lot of people. So it's using power, it's putting a drain on water because you use water for cooling. So there's going to be a whole bunch of issues that need to be addressed with all the data centers and the server farms that get put in.
Hearing from Pat makes it clear that using AI responsibly is as much about people as it is about technology. Responsibility is at the core of trust, leadership, and decision-making. To bring this closer to home, let's hear from Tippie student Trusha Bhatt. Trusha learned about responsibility early in her working life, but she also learned another key lesson: the importance of setting boundaries. She shared this story at our Spring 2025 Story Lab Showcase.
Typically, when you're in high school and you're 16 years old, you're worrying about prom dresses and wondering if you're going to pass Algebra 2. Me, on the other hand, I was focused on making employee schedules, handling customer conflicts, and making sure that I turned off the open signs when I closed, which I forgot to, actually. I had a part-time job at Scooter's Coffee shortly after I'd quit Dunkin' Donuts, and I realized I do really enjoy making coffee. And being a barista is so much fun, until it wasn't. Slowly, employees started quitting, people started getting fired, and our manager stopped showing up as frequently as she would. And before I could realize it, everything was in my hands. The more responsibility I took, I learned, the more tasks I got dumped on me. And this led to a lot of negative consequences like giving up my studies, losing some friends due to poor time management, and just a lot of negative health impacts. Being a junior in high school, I was still held the most accountable for my actions. I'd have to do open to close shift, pick up other people's slack, take out the trashes, do a lot of the dirty work that I didn't get paid for, didn't have the title for, or was I willing to do it? Not really. One evening when I was closing at Scooters, I was sitting there debating, do I go to my tennis match tomorrow morning, or do I stay back and close the store because I know without my supervision, this is gonna turn into a mess and it's gonna be hard to come out from this deep hole. So instead of blowing up on my manager over phone, I decided to be cool, calm, and collected, and after my emotions had passed, I reached out to her to have a one-on-one meeting with her and told her the things I was willing to do and the things I was not very sure to be willing to do, and explained my side of the story. This experience at Scooters not only taught me how to deal with people, but it taught me how to set boundaries and learn that when you're available and you're accountable does not mean you always get to pick up other people's slack. I also learned this in my life right now as I'm a real estate agent. I learned people are going to come to you with questions and concerns all the time, but it's ultimately up to me to set boundaries on my personal time versus my business time. So I guess you can say at 16, I was a boss, literally and figuratively. Thank you.
That was Trusha Bhatt at our Spring 2025 Story Lab showcase in downtown Iowa City. Story Lab is open to all Tippie students, faculty, and staff. And on the Story Lab website, you'll also find past storytellers, including our own faculty expert from this episode, Pat Johanns. You can watch video of Pat's story there, as well as Trusha's. Speaking of Pat, let's go back to him one last time for a final tip-e for you to remember in your work.
If you're using ChatGPT or a generative AI, think of it as a very enthusiastic intern. And their goal is to provide you with an answer. Always be wary of that answer. So verify. Check out your source. Check out any references it has. And don't assume that because it's an AI, it knows more than you do.
Again, Pat dives deeper into this topic in his new book, AI in Business: Creating Value Using Artificial Intelligence, coming this January from McGraw-Hill. Hearing from both Pat and Trusha shows that responsibility isn't just an abstract principle, it's a practice. Whether you're designing an AI system or managing your own work and boundaries, responsibility is about making thoughtful choices that stand the test of time. Next week, Tippie Management Professor Ido Shao will help us explore what happens when AI becomes too much and how to stay balanced when technology risks overwhelming our work. This episode of Tippie Leads was written and produced by me, Nick Westergaard, with special thanks to Pat Johanns and Tippie student Trusha Bhatt. To learn more about our faculty guests, their research, and more, go to tippie.uiowa.edu/Tippie Leads. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or coworker, or better yet, subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. And if you're feeling generous, consider leaving us a rating or review to help others find the show. This is Nick Westergaard signing off. On behalf of everyone at Tippie, thanks for listening, and go Hawks!
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkis-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkisporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.